Welcome to the College Essay Advisors podcast. Before we introduce ourselves, here's a little preview of what's to come.
I think there's been a pretty massive change in terms of what can and cannot be addressed in admissions essays, mostly because I think admissions and people in general have come to believe that being authentic and being able to articulate an opinion and or your belief system is more important than neutrality. Welcome to the College Essay Advisors podcast, an ongoing exploration of how to write admissions essays that get you noticed and accepted. Hi, my name is Stacey Brooke, and I am the founder and chief advisor at College Essay Advisors.
Hi, my name is Becca Myers, and I am Director of Advising at College Essay Advisors.
Yes, you are. And today we're going to talk about religion, faith, and politics and how to write about them or whether you should write about them in your college admissions essays. For a long time, there was prevailing wisdom that you couldn't write about religion or politics, or that you should essentially, don't touch the third rail in your college admissions essay. Just keep things pretty neutral and just kind of keep these subjects out of your essays. But I think there's been a pretty massive change in terms of what can and cannot be addressed in admissions essays, mostly because I think admissions and people in general have come to believe that being authentic and being able to articulate an opinion and or your belief system is more important um than neutrality. Essentially, having strong opinions, being able to like think deeply, being able to reflect uh on morality, um on just general behavior and what we want the world to be like is an asset. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean admissions is going to agree with you in terms of your belief system. It doesn't mean they're not going to agree with you. What it means is that they're going to try not to care whether they believe what you believe or not. And they're going to be assessing you based on your ability to articulate yourself and explain how your beliefs and what you think about impacts the way you carry yourself in the world, essentially.
Well, the
Um,
reflection component is
yeah.
important because you can't write an essay that is about indoctrination, right? It needs to
Yes. Yes.
even
This
if you
is this is
believe.
you're not preaching to admissions for sure
Right,
in this.
right, right. And there needs to be, even if you believe something so staunchly, there needs to be a sense that you've also interrogated it in an interesting way, because college is a
Absolutely.
place. I mean, I think a lot of people now, some people even complain about this, that college is a place where you get in there and you kind of rethink some things that you might have believed growing up. So it's fine if
Hmm.
you very firmly commit to a thing that's integral to who you are,
Yes.
but I would like in the essay to see that there's reflection about how you came to that and also about what it means for you in the future. So it's not just like, here are the things I believe. Like,
Completely.
it
And you're
has to be
writing
more
about what
complicated than
these
that.
beliefs mean to you. And it should be
Right.
clear that your stories and reflections are based on your own experiences, but that you are not above being open to other cultures, other belief systems. Um, I think admissions is looking for someone who can do that interrogation and who isn't closed-minded in a way that is going to be unhelpful to the rest of the
Yes.
community.
Yes.
I do think, not to immediately contradict what I was saying at the very beginning of this podcast, I actually do think there are maybe a few things. Look, this is the year 2024. Lots of stuff is happening in the world. I think there are some topics that potentially are just too fiery to address, like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a very challenging one for someone to potentially take on. I think people's opinions about that currently are pretty divided, staunchly divided in a way that I think that might give me a little bit of pause.
Well,
Um,
because I guess my question with that, or the the issue with that too is like, what does that say about you? Like if you, because how do you write that essay where it becomes something that tells admissions who you are as a person, right?
I'll
Like you
tell
can
you
have,
how.
oh, tell
I'll
me.
tell you how, because I had a student do it last year. Um, a student was talking to me about this, and I bring up that it's inadvisable to write about it just to tell you how you can write about it. I had a student who was telling me how his peers were asking him like really hurtful questions. He was Muslim, really hurtful questions about quote unquote why Muslims were starting a holy war. This is what his peers were asking him in school. So
Wow.
his essay essentially was addressing the issue of bigotry and prejudice and allowing him to discuss how he was challenging these misconceptions about his religion and what his religion actually meant to him, what he believes his religion actually preaches. Um, and it was a really beautiful, reflective essay that centered around his own personal experience and beliefs without, making any potentially, controversial proclamations regarding the state of a very complicated world issue. It was really much more about how that world situation had ultimately impacted him personally in his daily life. So I think that's an example of how writing about religion, which overlaps with a very hot political issue, can be actually quite thoughtful and informative for admissions and
Yeah,
personal.
that's a great example. I think it's sort of rare for a student to have that take on it or to have,
Absolutely.
right. And so we definitely that
You have
not
to be really
not
careful. You have to be
yeah.
careful.
And also
Um,
I when if I were working with that student, I love that essay. That sounds beautiful. I would also be thinking about what are you going to do for the world I come from, diversity essay. Like, is it like what would I have suggested it go there instead for a different story? It sounds like that was, I mean, that seems like so integral to their identity that that was the
yeah.
main thrust of, yeah, and I get that. But I think most students, if they came to me and said, I'm really thinking about religion, I'm thinking about my Jewish American identity, or I'm thinking about like, I don't know, I have like a Palestinian grandmother, then I would probably also think, okay, let's put that here right now, and then let's
Hmm.
explore some other things and think, does that go in a supplement, or is that going to be the expanded? Is this it?
Hmm.
I mean, I think if it's a great story, we can make it work for either one. I think
Completely.
at this in 2024, I'm thinking about it more for a supplement probably right now,
Yeah. Unless, for example,
unless
as this
unless
student was a like a political science potential political science major, or some if this it anchored a worldview that was really conducive to joining the specific academic community that someone wanted to be a part of. I think centering that story here makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
um it really depends. I mean, and it also depends what else they had going on, and there was so much on that resume that we really had a lot to distribute in terms of getting things into supplements. And this was such a beautiful story, the way that he told it, that I had to give it the green light for the personal statement, but I totally understand what you're saying.
yeah,
um
no, it sounds amazing. I mean, I probably would have done the same thing.
That's also a good example of, I say to parents and students all the time that there is no one right way to do this, period. Like, and to do this, I mean to write any of these essays, to distribute any of your information across an application. There are like 3,000 right ways to do it. And a lot of the time, the challenge is about just kind of making a decision and committing to it and executing beautifully on a strategy. But there are so many right ways. And you and I think generally align in terms of the things we're advising people to do, but we also are, our our brains are not exactly the same, and we do have some creative ideas that move in different directions, and that impacts the way we advise our students. And that's what's beautiful about this practice, I think, is that it the essay writing practice in general can produce like a wide variety of responses, most of them pretty good
Yeah,
if you're
I'm actually helping a student right now write an essay about the relationship as to being agnostic. I guess they're atheist. And I can't really talk about the specifics of it, but it's interesting because I I was surprised that I wanted to go with this topic. And then I realized, as you're saying, it's such an individual decision. Like, it actually is going to be
Mhm.
an incredibly beautiful essay that
Mhm.
is focused on a belief system.
Mhm.
And I haven't had that in several years, but I was looking at their free rights and I thought this is super, super
Mhm.
interesting. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna green light God. We're gonna do it.
Maybe more so than your student is greenlighting God in their own lives.
Yeah,
Um,
no, pretty much, pretty much. In fact, I'm the result of this. They may find. No, I'm not looking to.
I mean, I also love these essays often, like you're saying that this kind of surprised you in terms of how magnetic it felt in its appeal. And I mean, I love when that happens with students. And another example that I was thinking of related to religion was a Hindi student who was talking about one of the central examples that he was examining was this tradition of bowing at his grandparents lived with him, bowing at his grandparents' feet every morning. Um, and the idea that, we're living in a modern era. He was born in America. Um, I think there are some different ideas here, even, when you're practicing, an ancient religion that goes all the way back to, his parents' home country that might not feel accepted here per
Mhm.
se, and that the essay was about him sort of challenging and thinking about the role of elders, the wisdom of people who are older than him, the respect that is maybe demanded but maybe also deserved, or like he just sort of challenged that idea of what it means to give respect to people, or what it means to um you know learn from the people who are older than you, and what he hopes to bring to that role when he's there one day. So I thought that was just a really fascinating topic that, I mean, I learned so much too about his religion and what he believed. And um I don't know, it made me think a lot of things about my own life. And I think that is fascinating and incredible when a student can, make the reader rethink something that they originally maybe would not have questioned in the same way.
I was going to add that I am mindful of a student's school list when I'm approving a topic. So the student I'm working with
Mm.
now who's writing about their journey to atheism, they are not applying to Boston College, for example. I'm thinking about schools that are very rooted in Jesuit traditions or religious schools. And it would be kind of, I think, rare for someone who identify at all to apply to those schools. But and we also I don't know, I look at like Boston College, I think there's a certain percentage of students that identify as Catholic. I don't have the number on me right now, but I don't know. And admissions also wants diversity, so would they keep you out for saying I don't believe in God? I don't know. I don't think I'd risk that with a student. If they told me Boston
Mhm.
College is my first choice, I love it for these reasons, but
Yeah.
I have no
Absolutely.
relationship to God or faith, and I would say let's not put that in there.
Yeah.
Let's just not talk about it. I don't think I'd advertise how you have come
Yeah.
to that conclusion.
Yes. And that doesn't mean, and I was going to bring this up too. This is on my list of things to talk about. The religious bent to their educational philosophy may ask questions related specifically to the faith that undergirds their ethos. Um, so if it's assumed that if you want to apply to these schools, you understand that your beliefs don't have to exactly align, and many people's don't, but you have to feel comfortable answering questions like, at Boston College, we draw upon the Jesuit tradition of finding worthwhile conversation partners, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and it is a good idea that it's all over the websites for these colleges, but they'll tell you, what the belief system, what the Jesuit tradition entails in terms of belief systems. And most of them are things that are not hard to get behind, like service. Um, but it's definitely worthwhile to look that up, do research, make sure that you feel comfortable with with that element of educational bent and emphasis with those schools. And like you're saying, I think the other application materials should probably um be analyzed with that emphasis in mind.
Is Boston College the school that has the supplement where you choose and one of them is what would you pick for our first year reading book? You know, how like they assign.
Yeah, I don't think it's that one. I can't remember. I actually looked up. So the conversation partner question for Boston College was last year's. We draw upon the Jesuit tradition of finding worthwhile conversation partners. Some support our viewpoints while others challenge them. Who fulfills this role in your life? Please cite a specific conversation you had where this conversation partner challenged your perspective or you challenged theirs. So even within the framework of this supplemental essay question for BC, they're saying people are going to challenge your belief system all the time. We're actually encouraging you to have engaged in these conversations. They don't want people to believe only one thing. Um, so I think there's something about that reaffirms what we're saying in that you don't have to necessarily, be exactly aligned with the, religious belief system that underlies the college you're applying to if it is a religious institution. Um, I think atheism is a tricky one with
Yeah, because
that.
I don't because the example I'm thinking of, and it may not be BC, but it's definitely a Catholic school that every year they assign a group read to the
Hmm.
incoming class, and
Right. I
a
know. I
couple,
can't remember which one
right?
this is.
Hi everyone, Becca's right. She is talking about a supplemental essay prompt from Boston College. The prompt reads, each year at university convocation, our incoming class engages in reflective dialogue with the author of a common text. What book by a living author would you recommend for your incoming class to read, and why would this be an important shared text?
A couple
Hmm.
years ago, I had a student who wrote their first draft on the book they wanted to pick was, I think it's Christopher Hitchens.
Hello again. The book Becca is referencing is called God is Not Great by Christopher Eric Hitchens.
And
Hmm.
they had like a STEM background. They were super interested in the science behind why there isn't a God. And I sort of got them on the phone and said, look, this is really well written. It's super interesting, but I cannot see this particular college wanting to assign that to an incoming class that is predominantly going to be students of Catholic faith. It doesn't it like it is a sort of challenge, like let's think together about this. But the book assignment was actually given through like the faith center. They're the ones
Hmm.
that ran. So we like looked up the prompt specifically and like the origins of it and who was making the decisions about the books.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
it felt to me not a good pick.
Hmm.
Super interesting book, would love to have a conversation with a student about that, but it felt a little off in terms of like let's not just push the envelope a little, but let's go way over here and
Right.
pick a thing
Right.
that's like pretty aggressively anti-God.
Right.
And I just thought like, why are we risking this if you care about this school?
Completely. Completely. Yeah. I mean, it could be in some lights seen as a risk that might get you noticed, but I think it would be difficult for me to greenlight that too in
Yeah,
that
that's the thing
situation.
is it's the risk situations. If a student has like, if it's not their top choice and they want to, and I'm willing to try it, but if they come to me and say, gosh, this isn't my top three, I really care about this school, I don't think the risk in that case is worth the reward. I think it's too much of a risk. That's just
Mhm.
my advice.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think those are the kinds of things that we're going to be assessing with really any student who comes to us wanting to write about one of these topics. Same with politics. I mean, I don't mean to equate these things all the time, religion and politics, but I think those are just some of the issues that ultimately end up being controversial and more potentially on the chopping block for us
I do,
depending.
but
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to say you also though like sincerity comes into play. So a couple years ago, I worked with a student who is the president of their high school Republican club, and
Mhm.
they had a big list of schools that included schools that had a liberal bent, and they did really well in their application because they wrote about their political belief system in a way that was like authentic and showed still a degree of like vulnerability and thought, and it was
Completely.
lovely, and I wasn't going to talk them out of like writing about
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah,
admissions officers will even say, like, admissions officers I've talked to have said, we want a diverse class with
they do.
diverse
They do.
schools of thought. So I think you're right in that scenario. And we talked about that student, I remember, and we both agreed that totally made sense for authenticity. Also, there is a degree of consistency and alignment that's going to be expected if you are president of the school Republican club. There's, and then you want to write about your Republican beliefs as related to, some specific supplemental essay question. Like, that makes total sense. It makes all the sense in the world. It would be crazy for you to change direction at that point. I mean, you don't necessarily have to draw attention to it, but again, I think that's a completely different scenario,
Yeah.
where I don't think that it's going to disqualify you in the eyes of admissions. In fact, it might, at some of these liberal institutions, actually make you an interesting candidate, because
I agree.
potentially less people with your belief systems will be applying to those institutions.
Because they want thoughtful
Mm-hmm.
applicants. And
Absolutely.
not all, like, yes, even your most liberal school is going to have typically a Republican club. And so they want the best of the best. They want the person
Mm-hmm.
that very much affirms their belief, like their own Republican belief system, but also is willing to engage in conversation and be thoughtful and
Mm-hmm.
present that if that's authentic to you. And it's much better than like what we were saying, like trying to hide it. Like that doesn't make
Yeah,
any sense.
absolutely. Completely.
That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to follow us for more. Happy writing!